Welcome to Wordies, and today we are talking about one of the most challenging, or rather, I would say that it's the most difficult in terms of length, in terms of the content, and that is the operational risk. Now, I do understand that operational risk is a lot of theory, but what I'm going to do in this particular video is that I'm going to give you some clarity as to how you can manage studying the operational risk and try to score maximum in this particular subject. Okay, so without any further ado, let's get started. All right, so the very first thing, that before I actually begin about the operational risk, I want you to understand this thing, that operational risk as a topic is quite subjective, right? There's no guarantee that you can be on the higher end, which is a first quartile, or you could be in the or you could land in somewhere in the middle, right? No one knows for sure, because this is purely subjective, and moreover the questions are based on behavioral side. So one very important tip that I can give you right away is that for the operational risk, make sure that when you try to answer the question, right, you look at the options and select the best possible one, because most of the cases, just to give you one example, so maybe on the exam you may have a question like, okay, you are an anti-money laundering officer, and you have a certain due diligence process. So what would you pick the best one? Now, at this point, it's even if you don't remember, or if you haven't gone through the curriculum, but you're supposed to know that, okay, what is the best possible choice as an anti-money laundering officer you would actually take in your bank. So that is what the thought process is. Your behavioral ethics will need to be very strong when it comes to managing the operational risk. So that is just one small tip that I can actually give you. So now what I've done here is that I have actually divided the entire syllabus into three portions, okay, or three buckets. So this is bucket number one, this is the second part, and this is the third part. Now what essentially you need to be doing is that, now I'll just give you why I've done that. So on the exam, there's going to be 16 questions that is going to be asked in operational risk, right? So if you divide those 16 questions into these three different parts, so let's suppose that you get 5 questions from this particular bucket, you get 6 questions from this particular bucket, and another 5 questions you get from this particular bucket. If you just try to look at certain things, you would realize that this second bucket, this is something, if you look at the chapters, everything, it talks about the money laundering, it talks about the financial crime, basically all the case studies that you have. This second bucket is quite manageable. If you look at the content, it's not very huge, not so theory. It's quite interesting, right? You learn about the case studies, third-party risk management, outsourcing risk, so on and so forth. And these are perhaps the favorite topic of GARP. That's why I've given quite a high weightage to this particular bucket. So essentially, you can score maximum in these particular chapters. Easy to manage, not very theory, right? And perhaps interesting as well. So this is your first thing. When you actually begin with your operational risk, you should be actually targeting the bucket number 2, which are these chapters that I've highlighted here. Now, if you look at the third bucket, again, you get 5 questions that can actually show up on the exam. If you look at the content here, these are all actually practical thing. You probably can see a practical question on the RAROC calculation, right? Probably the Basel Accords. These are the favorite topic of CAR. So again, if you do well on these topics as well, okay, that can actually help you to score another good points, and that's all that you need, right? And then finally, we are actually left out with the most theory, and some people actually, when they try to begin with this, begin the operational risk with these kind of topics, they actually feel very boring. It can get a little bit exhausting, but again, it's quite interesting, I would say that, however. So again, if you look at the points or the questions that can show up on the exam from this particular bucket is actually 5, okay? So my point is this: rather than you focusing or getting stuck in this particular bucket, Okay, I would say that it's really important that you actually focus on what is more important, which is this easy to manage and easy to manage this as well. So this is one way that you can actually focus more on the second and the third part, and you still can score maximum out of these things. Now, talking about how do you effectively study the first bucket, let's say the chapters 1 to 9. Now, I would say that this has the highest amount of content. When it comes to the operational risk, you see a lot of information, a lot of things that actually talks about the operational risk, right? So in my opinion, what I would say is that you either can actually refer to the crash course notes. Okay, that is one thing that you can actually do, so that you have a entire summarization, and that will help you. But let's suppose that you're doing self-study, then in that situation, what you could do is you can actually write down or mark down the points which are very important. So for example, the best practices, as an example, you can have the best practices for the board of directors, the CEO. So you just mark it down and highlight those points, so that next time that you read it, you just read those 4 points and you're good to go. So just to summarize a little, focus on the easier things that you can actually score the highest on this and will take you less time. Okay, and then move to the first one. So that's one thing that I'll suggest. Focus more on the behavioral type of questions that you would get on the exam. Practice these out. Try to solve as much examples as possible, so that you get very much comfortable in answering the operational risk type of question. So this is going to be helpful for the exam. Yes, again, the strategy, however, is this, that you have to focus more on the second part and the third part to score the highest. So with that being said, these are some practical tips that will help you to score the maximum on the exam. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, please post it down in the comments below. With that being said, guys, thank you so much.